Good afternoon. We're here at Reputational Asia in Hong Kong, and we're going to be talking about healthcare and health tech investments in Asia. I'm Mark O'Hare, I'm Chief Exec of Preqin, and I'm here talking with Greg Hara from JStar and James Ieong from Pagoda. Greg and James, do you want to kick us off as we did in the panel and just give a brief description of the kinds of investments that you're each making in healthcare in Asia? Let's start with you this time, James.
Okay, thanks. I'm James Ieong from Pagoda. We do technology investments and also healthcare investments. From what we see, there's a lot of demand for the healthcare in China, and there's the huge sort of a concentration of the healthcare resources in Beijing and Shanghai, the sort of a top tier one city.
That was an amazing statistic you gave in there. What percent is it?
It's 40% of the entire country's medical spendings are concentrated in Beijing and Shanghai. When people are sick, they flew all the way, to Beijing or Shanghai, just look for the, so-called the best services.
But so James, leaving aside everything else that's going on,
yes.
That by itself must, in the next decade, drive enormous opportunity and in bringing healthcare elsewhere in China.
Absolutely, and the government tried to, redirect the patient flow to the second or third tier hospitals and eventually to the clinics, where we can create the GP communities to have a better sort of health. So you don't go to the hospital for just catch a cold or the normal get a flu. You go there for a serious sort of a disease, and that's it's a future directions for the people.
So that's two big trends that you're benefiting from. One is just kind of availability and delivery of healthcare per se, and secondly it's the dynamic between the hospital and the clinic. Now, Greg, moving on to Japan, tell us about what are the drivers, what are the opportunities that you're seeing there?
Well, probably that the viewer knows that Japan is very fastest, one of the very fastest aging society. Therefore, keeping the healthcare budget low is the big, I would say the social issue in a Japanese market. Therefore, we are not necessarily a healthcare focused fund, but as a result of these phenomena that we have many portfolio companies in the healthcare area. But the point I was making is, not we are betting on the macro growth of this healthcare industry. Rather improving the efficiencies. So therefore, there is a focus shift. From the hospital care to home care, and that's just one of the aspects. But many of the these changes are happening in a Japanese market. Therefore, we are focusing on smaller sort of the healthcare facility type of the operator, rather than technologies or the medical clinic itself. It's something to do with the regulation as well. Probably I'll talk about later.
Absolutely. So that's a difference in the two markets already. That there's maybe more fundamental macro growth in China than in Japan. But even in Japan, you're going to see healthcare go from what percent of GDP to what? It's a growing percent, right?
Yes. Well, now currently at the sort of healthcare is 8.9% of the entire GDP is relates to the healthcare. But 2040, it is forecasted that it's that 8.9 becomes like 11% of the entire GDP. Therefore, budgetary limitation is going to be a very key to the healthcare industry.
Now you're investing in buyout transactions with operators Greg, and James, you do that, but you also invest in the technology itself. So you've in fact got two different funds investing in those two things. Is that right, to meet investors' needs?
Because the overall the healthcare trend is rising gradually, very fast. So we do see there's a lot of opportunity alongside with that. We did a buyout for the Australian oncology business last year, and I see that as a growth buyout because the market is growing in Australia and in Singapore, which the two countries they have been operating in, and then we bring the China as the growth demand to further expansion. So that sort of it's a bit different to the traditional buyout. So we call it like a growth buyout. Mm-hmm. And then if you look at the overall market is growing very significantly. So the opportunity given to you is a tremendous. So we will help the local, say, cancer care hospital to grow up, or we help the large hospital to upgrade the oncology centers. Right. We can also to create independent chain for oncology business. So that opportunity is very different. And once we have these medical services places in place, then we will be able to adding more technologies like advancing medical devices, equipments to bring up the efficiency and bring down the cost, which is very much needed by the government. Currently, China is about 6.2% GDP spent in the medical side. We see that will increase quite dramatically in next 2, 3, 4 years. And where it happens, the governments and also the sector needs to bring down the cost dramatically. Otherwise, you will create so much trouble, burden to the social welfare.
Now, most investors would think of healthcare in itself as being quite specialized, but I guess you're both taking it, another stage further, where James, you're not exclusively, but focusing quite a lot on oncology and cancer care, and Greg, you're investing a lot in the move from hospitals to hospice care and home care. So are there other sort of those are two important themes you're both sort of investing behind and building expertise in. Are there other areas that you're looking at, James, and that you're looking at, Greg, or are those the main thrusts of it?
We look at anything, slightly different than the China market is that medical clinic itself, we cannot own the medical clinic unless by definition that the medical clinic need to be owned by the medical doctors.
Right.
Therefore, we are staying away from, that area. And also, I have a bunch of venture friends in there, but because of the, regulations and somehow industry itself is opposing to, change, therefore we've been focusing on, more B2B business services to increasing the efficiency rather than directly increasing the efficiency of the cure and care. So that's the area we've been focusing on, and probably although we are not the expert of these sort of healthcare technologies, but healthcare definitely the good side is a growing industry with a high variation. But flip side is that GP probably owes the in a lot of the regulational risk. Reputational risk.
Right.
So because we are dealing with everyday people's life as a patient.
Yeah.
So if there is mismanagement and if people dies, then it's going to be a very big scandal and a bad reputation for the GPs. Therefore, experience is needed. So I'm not recommending, healthcare, investment is not everyone's investment. Yeah.
So, reputational risk is one thing, and we'll come on to that if we have time. But the other one is regulatory, not risk, but understanding the regulatory background, because as you've both described, it seems to be very different in Japan and China, and on our panel we were talking about Southeast Asia as well. So it's putting oneself in the shoes of an LP who's interested in, kind of, there is the macro story of, growing economies, growing proportion of GDP spent on healthcare, right? That's an investment opportunity, but you absolutely need local players. I'm doing your sales pitch for you. You need local expertise if you're to invest successfully in this industry.
Yes. No,
maybe
absolutely.
more so than most
I think
industries.
Mark, towards your point, I think the local expertise is very much needed, right? If you look at in China, there's not enough service provider, highly concentrated, players in the market. Once you expand it, that means you need a lot more medical services people in there. You need training. You have very good, monitoring, and then we think to the digital technology, we'll be doing a lot more remote sort of access, digital diagnosis. But then at the same time, medical device services also, it's a very offline, right? People need to go into the facility to take examination, to be properly cured, and this is a big service industry. So we do see this overall as like it's a big consumer play. When people go, the sort of consumption power goes up in China, and people are more aware of their own health. In the past, they always buy, luxury goods, nice car, nice house. Now they look after their own health. They wanted to know how long they're going to live. They wanted to, do the running, do the marathon. They try to keep fit themselves. So this is a good awareness bringing to the overall sort of healthcare services that makes overall it is a good consumer play, but at the same time you will need a lot more technology to bring up overall the efficiency.
Yeah. We should really, we'll have to wrap up in a moment, but I want to come back, Greg, to a point you made about reputational risk, and you talked about the reputational risk of investing in the healthcare industry. Yes, but is it worse any more than investing in airlines, cars, food? All these things can impact upon us.
Well, but especially a portfolio company, hospice care, people are very close to die, so it's kind of difficult to differentiate that people die because of the natural cause or misconduct of the caregivers. Yes. That's why proper management, compliance, accountability to explain what the situations are to the family of the patients are very important. So malfunction of the some plastic parts may be okay, but it's
right.
Yeah.
Right. Any final thoughts you'd like to give to any LPs or GPs who are listening as to what things they should be thinking about in formulating their strategy and their thoughts on perhaps investing in healthcare in Asia?
Healthcare is not a fast play. It's nothing like digital sort of business. You can expand very dramatically in 3-6 months' time. You give a huge return. Healthcare, it is a long-term business. It requires people, very diligently inputting their own sort of know-how, and then also the technology and the resources and the capital in expecting return in a few years' time. But we do see there is an upward trend from the upward trend for the consumers, for the peoples, for the patients, that they need a good quality of services, and that's where we see the opportunity is. So we need to be patient, but at the same time, there's a very promising market.
Absolutely, and as you said during our panel, that tragically, oncology is a chronic condition, but therefore it's a long-term, kind of business opportunity as well. And Greg.
Yeah, so although budget is getting bigger and bigger, and demand and the number of the patient is increasing, but don't macro bet. I'm seeing the tendency of because that the budget itself industry itself is relying a lot of the government subsidies and money. Therefore, seeing the trend is very important, especially that the pharmaceutical companies and pharmacy chains are severely hit. Whereas these care area is relatively getting good support.
Really good point. So within the overall kind of pie of the industry, some slices are going to be getting smaller,
right.
whilst others are
the sizes
growing.
are big, but limiting the cap severely, so that whereas we've been focusing on relatively a smaller industry, but increasing demand for like hospice care.
Right.
Therefore, that industry itself is getting a better treatment, and the variation is we are running out of the time, but attractive opportunities are there. So,
very good.
Yeah.
Greg, James, thank you very much indeed, and thank you all for listening to us. Have a great day.